Hey, welcome to the Upland Nation podcast. I'm Scott Linden, your host. I am appreciative of your attention, and I am doing my best to make sure we earn that regular attention from you over and over and over again. I also host the television series Wing Shooting USA. I hope you watch that. In fact, this time of year you can watch it on some of the Discovery channels. More information on that at my website, scottlindonoutdoors.com. For now, though, let's focus a little bit on, Montana, for example. Al Godori will be joining me in just a moment. Al is a frequent co-host, if you will, a guide on our television show, and get lots of great comments there. We'll also be covering some public access information for everybody, a hunting strategy and dog handling tip, and a quiz and a prize. Somebody's going to win a great gift just for paying attention and coming up with the right answer at the right time. First off, though, thank you to Sage and Breaker for making this all possible. Yeah, it costs money to put these things together, and Sage and Breaker is one of the organizations that does it. If you'd like more information on them, go to sageandbreaker.com. The highest quality gun cleaning and gun care products out there. And just a quick bit of advice, register at their website so that you can be on their mailing list, because they've got lots of new products in the pipeline that will make your life a little bit easier in the field and at home in the shop after your hunt. The thing I like most about their product line is their bore cleaning kit. One of the reasons is it's one pull, one clean. There you go, right in the field. As soon as you put the dog up and give him his water, you can carry on with your gun cleaning fairly quickly, and that's the whole point. sageandbreaker.com. And welcome aboard, Jack Homa and ESPAmerica.com. Hearing protection in the field and on the clay target range. Starting at just $900. Hey, can you hear me now? What's your hearing worth? It is inevitable. Unless you protect it, you will lose it. Find out more at ESPAmerica.com. Now, talking to me and all of you from Montana somewhere is Al Gadoury of 6X Outfitters. Al, great to talk with you again. How you been?
Very good. How are you doing?
I'm, look at me. I'm talking, I'm going to talk fishing and hunting with you a little bit, and that's one of the joys of this. We haven't really had a chance to talk much about the fishing side, but all life is good for me. This time of year, well, you know, we're talking about late summer and thereabouts by the time this is heard. You're kind of getting ready to at least mentally shift, I'm sure, a little bit. But let's talk a little bit about the fishing side of things with you. You've been in that business for a long time. How'd you get involved in guiding fly fishers in Montana?
Well, unemployment. I worked for a fishing hatchery for many years, and we raised fish for restaurants mostly. We did some stocking, and trout were always in short supply. And at some point, the demand was met, and the little hatcheries in Montana did not survive the price drop. And the bulk of the fish going to restaurants now come from Idaho. And the reason is they could raise a trout to market size in 9 months. And because the water's colder in Montana, it took about a year and a half. And we just no longer could compete. So I had a lot of experience on spring creeks because we used to lease the water there to raise our fish. And I just started guiding on the spring creeks. There were only a few other guides at the time in that business. Most fishing guides were float fishermen, but the bulk of my fishing is sight fishing, spring creeks, and private lakes now.
Well, you and I really should have met about 10 years before I started making Wing Shooting USA, because back then I was making a show that was half about fly fishing, and we would have had as great a time on the water as we have in the field now. I'm a little bit jealous. So, you've been doing that for a long time, and then all of a sudden I find you through sheer luck, I think, back in the day, as a bird hunting guide. How'd you get into the bird hunting business?
Well, the fishing business is so seasonal. It started to wind down. It started in April and would be winding down in September. And then the business changed. Saltwater fishing became very popular. I used to have a lot of fishermen came to Montana in the spring to fish. Now most of those clients are going saltwater fishing. So I had to do something to extend my season. I always liked bird hunting, so I started guiding bird hunters in Lewistown, Montana.
One of my favorite places, and the first time we went there, we hunted with you, I believe. After that, it's, Katie bar the door, trying to get there almost every other season in the last decade or so. Um, you've had a lot of dogs over the years, and we've seen a lot of them on the air, and you hunted with us in a lot of places, and you've hunted with other people in other places. What is you like so much about the bird hunting and the bird dog thing?
Well, I just find the dogs very interesting. Uh, and the bird hunting just gets you out in an area, off the beaten path. You see things other people, rarely see. Uh, Quite a variety of wildlife. We're always seeing eagles and antelope and mule and white-tailed deer, bears. You never know what you're going to see in the field.
One of the things that folks who watch the show like most about what you do with me is you enlighten all of us to a lot of that natural history out there, whether it's what crickets and grasshoppers eat and how that fits into the cycle of life, or just some of the plants out there that most people don't get to see very often. Where'd you get your love for that sort of thing?
Well, uh, when I was young and I was able to earn my first money, uh, first thing I did was get a subscription to Outdoor Life, Field and Stream, and Sports Afield, and I read those things cover to cover. I thought I would, once I had subscriptions to all of them, I would know everything about the outdoors in a very short time.
Didn't quite work out that way, but you're getting
No,
closer by the day, aren't you?
well, I'm learning what I don't know.
Well, when we hunt together, we cover a lot of ground, and I think that's, that comes with the territory, pardon the pun, but, if we're hunting, big country for prairie grouse in particular and Hungarian partridge, give us a little bit of a feel for some of the things we should look for if we're new to that kind of hunting.
Well, I look at the habitat. I don't look for birds. I just look for good habitat. And if you concentrate on that, you're going to find birds. Every year is going to be different, but there'll always be some birds on the good habitat. Uh,
If you wanted to we're going to talk about that actually in a minute or two. I have a listener question for you about that. So let's move on a little bit. And then your dogs, you work with your dogs all year long as well. Is there anything in particular that you need to do to adapt them to that big country versus, say, somebody who's hunting pheasants or grouse in the woods?
Not really. The dog should just be in shape. Most hunting dogs will figure things out, fairly quickly.
One of the things that we always seem to do is run into warm weather when we're with you out in Montana. You carry a lot of water for the dogs and for the humans, and so do we. But you also carry that spray bottle that's kind of become one of the things I've been obsessed with ever since. Tell me why you take that. Basically, you're spraying your dog down. How does that work as opposed to just dumping water on a dog?
Well, it seems to cool them off a little better than just pouring water on them. You pour water on a Labrador, it just runs off. The spray bottle works better. I can spray inside their ears. I can have them lay down and spray their stomach, and that seems to help them quite a bit. And often when it's hot, the dogs will have a lot of trouble locating a downed bird, and you just give them one spray on the nose, and it seems to make a tremendous difference. I used to guide quail hunters in Arizona a lot, and quite often we'd see a bird drop. I could even see the bird on the ground, and the dog would walk right over it. Give him one spray with a bottle of water, and he'd find it right away.
Probably a learned skill. You probably have to practice that a little bit before you just spray some dog in the face in the field, right? Do you train for it?
Um, yes, they like it. Uh,
So do we, by the way.
yes.
I just came across a business card of an outfit that I met at the SHOT Show, and they're basically making a mister, you know, like the kind you hang in the backyard. They're making one for guys who are walking around hunting. It sprays you from below, but it's the same idea. And you know, someday somebody's going to try and rig that to their dog, and then they'll be perpetually cooled off.
Yes.
Uh, Al, you get clients from all over the country, all over the world to come hunting with you in Montana, and one of the best places in the world, of course. But they come with varying levels of skill and experience. What are some of the things that you find that they do that you wish they wouldn't do? Perhaps they'd prepared better in one way or another. Without naming names, because the last thing we want to do is make some of your clients mad. But give us an idea of the kind of problems you face when people show up for the first time.
Well, most people concentrate on the gun. Your most important piece of equipment is your boots. Uh, you've got to have boots that are broken in and that you can walk in, and you've got to be in shape because it's a lot of walking. Uh, and the second thing would be practice your shooting before you come, and don't practice difficult shots. Most of the shots you're going to get is a bird angling away from you over a point. Uh, Practice some easy targets and get your confidence up. But I'd say half the hunters that hunt with me don't practice at all and hope for the best.
Yeah, we've all been there and done that, but I might echo that first bit of advice. I think the record for me and my crew with you is 13 miles in one day, and that was a hot day. Get in shape and yeah, don't buy your boots at the Walmart on the way to meet up Al for the day.
Yeah, and it would be helpful to have two pair.
Yeah, and I get it, I think, but you tell me why you think that.
Well, you can always have malfunctions, but uh, you know, the boots. A lot of the boots are Gore-Tex. They're breathable. They don't breathe all that well. They get damp. Uh, at the very least, you should change your socks at noon, and it'll help you a lot. Someone coming for 3 days probably doesn't need two pair of boots, but if you're hunting a week, it would be a good idea to have them along.
Oh, I agree 100%. I also, of course, have a shoe dryer, one of those Pete boot dryers, with me almost all trips all the time. And no matter how cold or how wet or how dry or how hot it is, I'm going to use that shoe dryer at night for a couple hours just to get all the grunge and the smell and the funk and the moisture out of those boots every night. What
Yeah,
about
that would help.
what about I guess I'll call it some of the dog hand, but some people bring their dogs. You've seen some of my dogs work over the years. Somebody else brings their dog. What are some of the things that they should prepare their dogs for out there on the prairie?
Well, number one, the dog should be in shape, and you should not plan on hunting one dog all day long. It's just too much for most dogs. There are exceptional dogs that can do that. Most of them cannot. Um, do not plan on training your dog while you're hunting. That should be done before the hunt. There's just not enough time to do that. Their dog is not going to learn anything from my dog. And, uh, things you should have along in case you need them, boots for the dog. And for pheasant hunting, uh, most of the time, if it's cool enough, my dogs are going to be wearing a protective vest. Because the pheasants live in some nasty places, and there's a lot of things that can cut your dog. Most often, it's a barbed wire fence. A wounded pheasant seems like you can always find a barbed wire fence to run through.
Yeah, in
Uh,
fact, most of the cut dog stories I hear are wounded pheasant, barbed wire fence, and a Chasing Brittany.
Yeah.
And there, yeah, you want to be ready for that. You carry a lot of gear for that. I carry a lot of gear for that too. But the prevention, that ounce of prevention's got to be worth more than a pound of cure, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. If you look at the vests my dogs wear, there's countless rips in them. Most of them on the chest, where they could really hurt them, but some of them on the back. And I don't know what you can do about protecting the legs. I've never really found anything that was comfortable for the dogs.
I actually just found something today, believe it or not, that may or may not make a lot of sense. It's built by the same guys who make a lot of other vests and other related things. The outfit's called Silmar, and if you just look them up, I'm sure you can probably get more information. But, all of those, the fundamental challenge I find with all of them is they're so dang hot. You've got to take extra precautions about an overheated dog. How do you do that?
Well, with pheasants, it's pretty simple. There's almost always water around.
Mm-hmm.
But I switch my dogs out quite often, so one dog is not going to work that long, more than a few hours.
Excellent. All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break. You can get yourself a cup of coffee real quick. Al, I'm going to do a little bit more talking because I get paid the big bucks. So hold on, because I got a question from a listener coming up right after this. Now, listen closely. And if you can't, it may be too late. But for the rest of us, we're still protecting our hearing as we should. And one way to do it is through ESP America, custom-fitted hearing protection devices, digital, waterproof, all sorts of other great stuff about them. Let me tell you a quick story. The first time I interviewed David Petzel of Field and Stream magazine, he was telling me that I'd have to speak up because he'd shot his ears out. I'd never met the guy, so I was a little bit afraid to look to the sides of his head, but luckily what he meant was, as a shooting instructor in the Army in the good old days, or the bad old days, he had not protected his hearing, and now he cannot hear a thing without his own hearing aids. If you want to avoid getting to that point, visit espamerica.com. I wear mine every time I'm in the field because I don't want to be David Petzel, at least have his hearing loss. Great guy. Great writer. If you don't want to be David Petzel, go to ESP America and check out their hearing protection devices, digital, waterproof, starting at $900. What are your ears worth? Probably the most prominent innovator in the dog kennel and crate world. Dakota283.com. They've got all sorts of great varieties of virtually indestructible roto-molded dog kennels, and then some other gear as well. And pay close attention, because if you buy one of their G3 kennels right now through September 31st, the first thing you'll get is free shipping. Then if you put one of these codes in, you'll get either a forever insert, which allows you to expand that kennel size to fit your pup as it grows, or their Dine and Dash water and food storage gizmo. I keep mine in the truck all the time. It won't spill. It holds a good 2.5 gallons of water. The codes at checkout for the Forever Insert, Linden FI. For the Dine and Dash, it's Linden DD. These folks have got it figured out. Greg and the crew have done something that you never realize how important this stuff is until you go out and you start trying to use it. The inside dimensions on these Dakota 283 kennels are virtually the same as the outside dimensions, the only difference being, of course, the thickness of the roto-molded plastic. I should call it military design and resin technology. So there's no surprise as you open the door, and there's hardly, there's a dramatic difference on some between the exterior and the interior dimensions, not with these Dakota 283s. And especially if you're planning ahead and you got a long trip, remember that kind of stuff. It does come in handy. All right, Dakota283.com. Don't forget the codes for the Forever Insert or the Dine and Dash FI or DD. And let's hope that you've got a new pup coming, and you will need one of those real soon. All right, with that, we are back. I have a question for Al in our Handle It segment. That's where we are right now. Al, if you're back with us, here is what we got from one of our listeners. For prairie grouse and Huns, are there specific habitat types that I should look for in the vast grasslands they inhabit? Now, you and I talked a little bit about that a moment ago, and you've taught me some things over the years that sometimes I can even tell the difference between good Hungarian partridge habitat and good sharptail habitat. But let's hear it straight from the guide's mouth.
Okay, if you don't know where to go, and you've got a vast field in front of you, the first place I would look is the higher areas in that field. They may only be a foot or two higher, but particularly sharptails and sage grouse, and to a lesser extent Huns, like to get on that high ground and look around. The native birds, they evolved with antelope, and they see that as a very safe area to hang out. So that would be the first place I would look. Second place would be around water, because Montana is generally pretty dry. Find some water. If there's birds around, you're going to see sign. You're going to see tracks in the mud. You're going to see feathers, dusting areas.
One of the other things that I've learned following you around for 4, 5, 6 years, I think, is the importance of shade early in the season for sharptails in particular, but I would imagine for any game bird. We found birds in that low-growing, whatever that plant is called, because it's the only shade for miles. Also, the only tree here and there. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, there's not much shade out on the prairie, and it doesn't take much to make them comfortable. On a hot day, particularly midday, they're going to seek shade and water, damp areas. If they're not disturbed, they may still stay out on the open on the high benches. But generally, if it starts getting up, in the high 70s and hotter, they're going to go to the shaded areas.
Makes sense to me, and it's probably true for all of those plains game. We found that to be true for virtually everything we've chased with you. Let's switch gears for a minute, because one of the more fascinating things I learned about you, and I don't know if you're still gunning at some of those spaniel trials, but you're a hell of a shot, number one. Number two, you shoot these old funky guns that are just unbelievably beautiful, and they've all got stories of their own. The two come together at a spaniel trial. How'd you ever get involved in some of that stuff?
Well, I was training with spaniel people, and we have a large dog club in Bozeman. We have a spaniel group and a retriever group and a pointer group. So in the course of the training, I do a lot of shooting on birds, particularly pigeons, which can be pretty challenging. And as far as guns go, this will get me in more trouble than anything. But if you're hunting prairie birds in Montana, nothing is more effective than a 12 gauge with an improved cylinder choke. It should weigh 7 pounds or less, because you're going to be spending 99% of your time just carrying it. It's not a target gun. It's not a gun you're going to go out and shoot 100 rounds at sporting clays with. It's not built for that. It's going to hurt you if you shoot it that much. But it's gonna work best for the prairie birds.
All right, so just because I never carry one, I'm kind of notorious as a 20 gauge shooter. You probably have firm beliefs about why 12 versus a 20. Just enlighten us, Al.
Well, the science backs me up. They pattern better. They have a shorter shot string. That's all there is to it. If you shoot the equivalent load in a 20 gauge, you're going to have a longer shot string, and the patterns never seem to equal what you get, with a 12 gauge with a proper load. I don't shoot real heavy loads. It's just a 1 1/8 ounce, 1,250 feet per second load, and I pattern my guns. I haven't seen anything that works better than that. I kill birds as far away as anybody else I hunt with. And,
yeah, don't rub it in.
Yeah, but, a lot of people have 20 gauge guns because they're using American guns. and there's a lot of target guns out there that people take hunting, and they're heavy, and 20 gaugers are lighter. Uh,
You're a
and I,
little bit like me in that you're kind of a fan of the side by sides quite often. What are you playing with these days? You got any treasures out there that you want to share with us?
yeah, I found a Lancaster that was made with Damascus barrels that was in mint condition, that was made in the late 1800s.
Wow.
And I was able to make a reasonable offer on the gun because the guy wanted to sell it right away.
You know,
If you look around once in a while, you get lucky.
yeah, I believe it. You know, in the minute you said Lancaster, I thought of airplanes. You know, back in the day, they were building British airplanes for World War II at least, maybe beyond that. But same
That's what
company?
happened. Yeah, that's what happened to a lot of the old craftsmen. Half of them were lost during World War One because they're building guns for the military and they went to war, and then a lot of those craftsmen were again lost in World War Two because all the effort went to building guns and the military effort. Uh, and the new ones, few people can afford, a $50,000 to $100,000 gun.
Yeah, not in my short-term plans, that's for sure.
Mine either, but they can afford a used one in good condition.
And the key, of course, is finding one in good condition. You've done that a few
Yes.
times. Is there any one thing that we should look for if we're really really interested in trying to find that heirloom gun?
Well, you have to be careful. Find one that hasn't been modified. The things to check are, the internal parts. Make sure there's no rust or anything, and the thickness of the barrels.
Sounds logical to me. So, if we're an avid, active rough grouse hunter or a quail hunter down south somewhere, we want to come up and be a sharp-tailed grouse hunter as well. What other kind of advice would you have for somebody like that once they get there? We know a little bit about more about where to look and what our dogs should be expecting. We should be expecting of our dogs. How about other preparation? It might be practical stuff. It might be just a place to go. Any suggestions for those of us who are out there?
Yes, Montana has a wonderful block management program, and there are hundreds of properties involved in this. And all you have to do is when you decide on which region to hunt with, uh, you can contact the Fish and Game Department in Montana, and you can get maps and detailed descriptions of these hunting areas. They're all managed differently, but I would say the bulk of them, you just go to the property and sign in and go hunting. Uh, some of them, the numbers of hunters are limited per day, uh, and you have to check with the landowner. But it's very easy to find out this information. You can find it out online. Now, uh, it's vast areas, and there's a lot of them. In a good year, good bird year, a lot of these areas are excellent. In a tough year, they may not be the best hunting around, but there's birds in these areas. If you're coming for a couple of days, you're better off going with a guide. Uh, if you're coming for a few weeks, you can find some good hunting.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. I've done it both ways, and with you and without you, that block management program is unbelievable. It's probably the best run one in the country, and I think part of the reason is the landowner only gets paid if he gets traffic on his place, and he's only going to get traffic on his place if he's trying his best to manage it for people like you and me. Is that still true out there?
Yeah, it's working out very well for the landowners. They don't make a lot of money with it, but they make a little bit, and they allow the public to hunt. They like to do that. Uh, that's where I hunt, when I get time off,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm very happy with it.
Yeah, the other thing I might suggest is what you alluded to, and that is not every place is going to be perfect. What it does is it saves you the trouble of trying to chase down landowners and knock on doors. You're still going to have to cross a lot of those places off your list, but you're also going to find some that you're going to keep on your list from year after year after year.
Yeah, well, all of them will have some birds. Of course, some are better than others, but the fishing game does monitor those places, and if it turns out, they're not producing, a good experience, for the hunter, they won't be on the block management program next year. And it's so popular, there's a waiting list for landowners to get on the block management program.
Wow, that is testament in and of itself right there.
And and we're paying for it. 50% of our license fees for non-residents go to the block management program.
Well worth it, and the joy of a license out there is there's a lot of country to check out. I know you as a fly fishing guide, an avid fly fisher when you're not working for money. Same with bird hunting. But tell us something we don't know about Al Gadoury.
Well, when I get time off, I go saltwater fishing.
Yeah, and you always rub it in, don't you? Somewhere around
Well,
February, right?
yeah,
Where have you been in the last few years?
I've been going to Christmas Island uh, just because it's so remote and there's such a variety of fish there. And you also catch fish every day. It doesn't seem to be affected that much by weather. No matter what the weather is, you still catch fish.
Well, I guess when you're smack dab on the equator, that kind of thing is not an issue, is it?
Generally, no, it hasn't been.
You remember and I remember when Christmas Island was the new hot place to go, and then it kind of fell off the radar screen because everybody was going. It was too crowded, but nobody wanted to go there anymore.
Yeah,
And now it's back, it sounds like. So they're doing something right over there, aren't they?
yeah, they're working hard to preserve what they have.
All right, one quick fly fishing tip, because about half of my listeners and half of my viewers on a bird hunting show enjoy fly fishing. So if you, as a pro guide, were going to give all of those folks one single bit of fly fishing advice, what would you tell them?
Practice your knots. Learn what the 100% knots are, and practice them so you can tie them in less than a minute. Most of the time, when I let a client tie a knot, when I check it, it comes right apart.
Yeah, and that's after a half hour of him trying to do it, right?
Yes.
Well, words to the wise, if that's one of your passions as well, that I can't think of anything better. That is so darn true. All right, what's your ultimate bucket list hunting destination? If you could do with hunting what you're doing with fly fishing, where would you go if money was no object?
I'd probably go to South Africa and take a train bird hunting.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, there are a couple of those out there, aren't there?
Yes.
And why does that appeal to you more than I don't know, Argentina for doves or to China for pheasants or something like that? What is it about that South Africa trip?
Well, I think the train would be interesting because you can really see the country, and they do a lot of
Yeah.
variety on that hunt, a lot of different birds. And I'm not looking to kill a lot of birds. I'm just looking to see something new.
And Africa is where you're going to find that. Everybody I know who's been there says it changes their life, and they are glad they did it. So put that on your list if you're thinking about it. I hope you can make it someday as well, Al. And in the meanwhile, look out. I'm headed for Montana again this fall. We won't be working together professionally, but the beer's on me when I do get to Lewistown or wherever you'll be that time of year. Good
Oh, I'll
luck.
be in Lewistown.
Yeah, you will. So I'll find you now that the highway's all fixed up. I hope it's fixed up by now. It'll be a little easier to find. So good luck. Thanks again for joining us here. It's always fun to talk with you. We never get to talk at length when we're walking around out there. So because I'm always huffing and puffing. But this has been fun, and I appreciate your taking the time to talk with all of us. Thanks again, and have a great day, Al.
Okay, one more bit of bird hunting advice.
All right.
Nothing frightens birds more than the sound of your voice when you're out hunting. Nothing.
Yeah, stealth will pay off, won't it?
Yeah, be quiet once your dog goes on point.
You know, I hear this a lot, but I never actually do it because I'm always talking for the camera or just for fun. So thanks again for reminding us of that. This is the Upland Nation podcast. That's Al Gadoury. If you want more information on Al, it's the number 6, the letter X, outfitters.com. 6X Outfitters. If you're a fly fisher, you know what that means. If you don't, go over there and learn more about Al and what he's doing these days. Al, thanks again. We'll see you down the road.
All right, thank you.
Always fun to talk with him. This guy is a wealth of knowledge, information, some of it trivial, but most of it useful, and there's a perfect example. Shut the heck up when you're in the field. And probably take the beeper off your dog's collar as well. There is so much to talk about here, and here comes the next part, and that is more and more public access. Now, Al and I talked about some of the great public access in the block management program in Montana. Iowa is coming along as well, and the joy of Iowa is, it was a pheasant hotbed for years and years, and then it kind of fell off the radar screen, had some rough years, but in our This Land is Your Land feature this week, I'm going to talk about some of the places I've been, in particular around Ottumwa in western Iowa. There's a lot of public access ground out there. Sometimes it's wildlife management areas, sometimes it's CRP that people will let you on for one reason or another. And there's lots of kind of broken up land, whether it's where timberland and crops meet or where there's a little drop here and there, a little canyon or a creek bed or something like that. All of those things, all those edges are where the birds like to hang out, and there is a lot of that in Iowa. The bobwhite populations are coming back. The pheasants have been back for a couple of years, so you might want to take a look at that. Some of the other things I like about Iowa: a later crop harvest and a more southerly location. That makes public access lands a good late season destination for all of us who are looking for public access. All right, one last plug for the television show Wing Shooting USA. I sure hope you will watch it. You can watch it in any number of ways. Of course, most of the time, we like you to watch it on Destination America and the American Heroes channels. Those are both Discovery channels. So look them up and check out the program guide there. And then coming soon, you'll also be able to watch Wing Shooting USA on Amazon Prime. So if you like to watch at your leisure, that's another way you can do that. Okay. This is the Upland Nation, and we're back in as our trivia question comes to the fore. Last week's question: Browning introduced their superposed shotgun. What does the term mean? Well, congratulations to David Brebner. He's won the Pete Boot Dryer for mentioning that means one barrel on top of the other. You get it, as opposed to side by side. In Italian, it's sovrapposto. Don't ask why I know that. This week's question, answer it correctly at scottlindonoutdoors@gmail.com, and you could be taking home a Yeti Hopper Sidekick dry bag. Take a look at the Facebook page. You'll see what it's all about, or go to yeti.com and you can learn all about their Sidekick. It's brand new. Pheasants were first successfully introduced to North America in what western state? Western state. All right, successfully western. Those are the key terms. Answer the question at scottlindonoutdoors@gmail.com, and I may be sending you that Yeti Sidekick dry bag. In the meanwhile, thank you again for listening in to the Upland Nation podcast. Tell your friends. Tell me. Let's talk at uplandnation.com. Until then, see you in the field.